want to talk a little bit about boundaries. I'm just about boundaries because I think the lunar eclipse and also the solar eclipse coming in April may have some themes about boundaries for all of us. I don't know if any of you are feeling that already, but I definitely am. And for me, it's not even boundaries with others. So I've been trying to establish boundaries and limits for my as far as my time and not wasting time because I want to be really productive and I want to get a lot of stuff done. And that's been really working for me. And sometimes we have to set boundaries. And I have a lot of people both in my earthbound job because, I worked for a company and I train agents and I do wellness for them and there's 1,700 of them. So there's a lot of pushing and pulling that goes on there. And you have to set some boundaries. And the same in my personal life. I have a lot of people I help, a lot of people that help me that I want to be able to spend time with, my own mentors and teachers. So I've really had to nail down the time frame and my schedule. And being able to do that in a simply stated way is very important. So for those of you out there who are struggling with that time, and this ties in with the Libra archetype, how do you relate to time? What is your relationship to time? And when you start to set boundaries, whether it's for time or even any other category in our lives, think about what your relationship is to that issue and that boundary. Because the way we relate to that is really what sets it for us. So I did not have a very good relationship with time. I was feeling either I didn't have enough time to do what I wanted to do, or I was finding that when I did have a block of time, whether it was sitting in a doctor's office or waiting for my next appointment or anything, I would become uncomfortable with the block of time unless I was filling it with something. So that's not a good relationship with time. Time is not meant to be feared or squandered. Time is something that we should be controlling for our betterment. So I had to really look at that and say, okay, well, what's my boundary with time and what's my relationship to it? So when we go to set boundaries, what we're really doing is we're establishing limits and we're establishing our relationship with those limits. So, remember, Libra is all about configuring ourselves through the other. And that's really what a boundary is, right? We're setting something, we're drawing a line in the sand, or we're drawing a circle around something that's acceptable in order to configure our own life in the way we want and what makes us feel safe and comfortable and in our optimum performance. So establish your limits, which means clear parameters, right? They're guidelines to operate in. That's really what it is. So before you set boundaries, you have to make sure that your own relationship with what you're about to do is for your betterment. Because I think a lot of times people go to set boundaries and they're doing it out of anger or spite or frustration. And that's really not what you want to do, because the whole idea of those established limits is to make something else better in your life, make it better for you to function, better for you to feel healthy, better for you to feel balanced. So when you're setting boundaries, just remember that. And what I always say is, in that regard, like, boundaries are super important. They're crucial for self-care. That's really what we're talking about here, is like, boundaries are really about self-care, because when we establish those limits, we are putting energy where we need to for our optimum peak performance and potential. And I like to think of boundaries as seeing potential come into form, right? Because how many times we have a boundary we want to set with someone and we don't? Like, suppose you have a friend who always overstays their welcome, or they're a long goodbye, right? I used to have a friend that would take 20 minutes to say goodbye in the front hallway, and I'd be like, practically just wanting to put my pajamas on. And then one day I finally said to her, well, I really need to wrap this up at a certain time because I have to get up very early to do a presentation tomorrow, or whatever it was. And then she understood. But how many times I didn't do that, and I really was harming myself, lack of sleep, staying up too late, all because I didn't want to say something. So when we think about those things and in regards to self-care, we've got to really simply state something. And I think that's super, super important. So the other thing I was going to say is that what I found is when I started to get really good at simply stating my boundaries, I found that my relationships were all much more healthy and I really enjoyed them. And that initial uts, I always call it, like that feeling you get in your stomach when you don't want to say something, that anxiety of, maybe I'm going to piss somebody off, or maybe they're not going to like me, or maybe I'm going to go too far and say the wrong thing. That anxiety is alleviated not by suppressing the conversation, not by simply stating what your boundary is. That anxiety is alleviated by stating it, by saying your boundary. That was my experience, and that's what I found, because I found that when I finally set boundaries, I not only felt more comfortable in myself, again, that Libran complex, configuring through the other, as I relaxed, they relaxed, and the relationship, the friendship, whatever it was a lot more comfortable and fun and enjoyable. So we set boundaries for ourselves. Really, that's what it's about, and that's self-care. We're not setting a boundary for someone else. And I know many of us, I don't have children, but I know many of you out there with children have had these really tough times when you've had to set boundaries, and it's been really, really hard. So I'm just going to look at the comments. Hey, Monica. Hi, Jay. Haven't seen you in a while. I hope things are good in Tennessee. Um, so that boundary setting, really draw yourself into the introspection of it's for you and it's about your boundary. And when someone doesn't respect it, also have something at the ready of what your intention is if that happens. It's just like I remember a long time ago, and I've used this so much since with other clients. I had someone who was a mentor, a spiritual advisor of mine, and I was in a relationship that was really tough. And I was at a point in the relationship where I wasn't sure if I should call the person or not, because we had been kind of like at a separation. And I remember her saying to me, if you make the call, be prepared for the outcome, whatever it is. And I had to really internalize that and be introspective and think about it and say, yeah, where's my boundary? Like, however this call goes, what's acceptable to me and what's not. So when you set a boundary, be prepared for the outcome. Be prepared that that person may not respect it, understand it, or adhere to it. And then what will you do? Does that mean the relationship is over? Does that mean you have to take another step? So, kind of pre-plan what the boundary is for you. And remember, we don't set boundaries to keep walls up. And a lot of people do that. There's a lot of protection complexes that we run, those self-preservation complexes that are just, false information appearing real, right? Our fear. We run those and we think about a boundary as a wall. Like, I'm just going to cut that person out of my life, cancel culture, because I'm not going there because they ticked me off and I don't want to be ticked off, so I'm not going there. I can guarantee you that person in a different form, face, body, or name will keep coming into your life because there's a lesson there you ain't learning when you cut that off. So is the medicine there? Is the lesson there? Then you got to work it through. So that's why boundaries are so important. A lot of times in the doing and the saying of them, we learn what the lesson is. So remember, it's not walls, it's actually established parameters for you to function better in. That's what a boundary is. All right. A boundary isn't something set that somebody's going to cross, and you set it because you can't wait for them to cross it, because then you're going to have them and you're going to have the upper hand and blah, blah, blah. That's just like really crazy, sick thinking. Boundaries are set to make you more healthy. Boundaries are set for your self-care. Boundaries are set so that you have an operating system where your full potential can be realized. That's what a boundary and established parameter is. So understand the boundaries, communicate them effectively. An example of effective boundary communication would be, I'm in a relationship now, a romantic relationship. We've been in a relationship for a while. And we completely respect each other's boundaries as to when we need alone time. And I absolutely love that about our relationship. It's one of the things that I know I really need, because I do a lot of spiritual work. I do a lot of very deep introspective work in my life. And I need big blocks of time where no one's coming in or out. I'm in my meditation, I'm in my healing room, whatever. And this person I am with really respects that. And by the same token, I respect that he needs to recharge. And oftentimes after he works a lot, he just needs to go home, close the front door, and not be bothered for a day or two. And I'm fine with that. Those are really healthy boundaries. Why are they healthy boundaries? Because it's a place in the relationship where I'm able to say, you know what, I'll see you on the weekend because I just need a few days to recharge. Or I have a really big project at work coming up and I just need a few days to really immerse myself in this presentation. Or I have a series of videos that I want to do on YouTube and I just need some time to go lock myself in the studio. And by the same token, he gets to do that in his way as well. Because we simply state I need to recharge. That's all there is to it, you know, and we respect that in each other. So respect the other's boundaries. And also, I know that this can be a really frustrating thing if you're in relation, whether it's a child, a parent, a romantic partner, a friendship, a boss, a coworker, where someone doesn't respect boundaries. But it's really important to clearly state without emotion sometimes what those boundaries are. Um, Also, this is the other thing I wanted to say, limits are not about isolation, because a lot of times people will set boundaries, or people will start to, you know, not go out or avoid social situations or avoid family because they're isolating. And that's really, really not a good thing. We don't want to set boundaries so that we can go home and be in our wound, or be home in grief, or be home in negativity. As I said before, boundaries are set so that we have an operating system that makes us comfortable and safe enough to operate in our full potential. That's what boundaries are for. And that's why they're so important. So I'm going to go to comments for a few minutes. We're going to go to commercial, and we are going to oh, and you're never late. You come in whenever you want. You can always watch replays. Okay. So we're going to go to a commercial really quick, and then when I come back, we're going to read Dawn Elizabeth and Deborah's charts.